I'm Marilyn Scott and I'm director of the Lightbox. The Lightbox is a relatively new museum and gallery. We opened in 2007, and I suppose it's a fairly new concept in that we are both a museum and a gallery in one building. And the reason for that, I suppose, is because we started with completely blank canvas. Woking had no museum, no gallery, very few visual arts facilities of any kind. So we were able really to think about what kind of concept would give us the best economies of scale and would introduce as wide a group of people to the arts and heritage as possible. So that was the concept, and then we drew up guidelines, we appointed architects, and we created the building. But actually that wasn't the point at which the journey started. The journey started years and years before that, when a group of local community enthusiasts, people who either participated in the arts in an amateur sense or were interested in local history, got together and felt very strongly that they wanted somewhere that would increase people's access to these areas. There were lots and lots of very enthusiastic people, but actually nowhere that acted as a focus for their activity. So that idea of some kind of centre had actually been in existence since the early 1990s. But of course these projects take an awfully long time to get off the ground. You start in a small way by trying to raise small amounts of money with advocacy, trying to get support. And so it basically took them 10 years or so before they'd managed to engender enough level of support to actually begin a build project, which I guess is where the story officially starts. The council had come on board in the late 90s when they saw Woking is a very, very forward-looking authority, and they do have a really strong belief in community participation, but they also do have a very strong belief in the ability of community groups to actually deliver services. You know, perhaps they were the big society before the big society existed. And so they put in a small amount of funding really as a feasibility exercise to appoint someone to come in, work with the local community to find out exactly what it was that people wanted. And so that was where their involvement began. Obviously lots and lots of encouragement, lots and lots of professional advice, and then finally the gift of the site, which in a sense was the first really tangible point at which they got involved by gifting the site to the charity. 40% of our running costs come from the local authority. That is in the form of a service level agreement. So it is not a grant, and I think from our point of view and from the point of view of sustainability, that's really important. We know what our agreement is for 15 years. We know how much money we will be getting for the next 15 years. So for us that is a key, that's a cornerstone really of our ongoing sustainability. However, that means we have 60% of our revenue to earn ourselves, and that's very, very challenging. But we do have that, if you like, security that we actually do have a portion of our funding secured going ahead, and at the moment that's hugely comforting. The only part of our operation that we franchise out is the cafe. Everything else, the shop, all our activity programmes, they're all run in-house, and we do work in really close partnership with the cafe. They're a local company, so they have a real knowledge of the local market. They source all their produce locally, so it's not like a big chain. We were very, very keen when we made the decision to franchise that we work with a local partner, and that's been really successful. As I've described, our roots were absolutely in the community. This is a totally bottom-up project, which I think is why it actually has been so successful. And you're right, it's a community space. We work with a huge range of different organisations, with Woking Mind, with the Alzheimer's Society. We work really closely with local schools, we work with ex-offenders groups. So the Lightbox is actually not thought of as a gallery. I think the Lightbox is a place in Woking where lots and lots of different people have associations for all kinds of different reasons. So almost the fact it's a gallery and museum is a little bit part of a byproduct, that it is some kind of space where a whole range of people feel comfortable at home, have a relationship with. I mean, I think that the fact that we've tried throughout all our fundraising, and obviously we had to raise over 7 million for the building, so fundraising was a huge task over a three-year period. But all the time we were very conscious that one of the major stakeholders, the most important stakeholder, was the Woking community, and so all our fundraising gave people the opportunity to contribute in all kinds of different ways. I mean, the installation we have on the staircase, which is hands, those were handprints from many millions or many thousands of people living in Woking, and that was a kind of contribution really to the building. Also, we ran a Names on Glass scheme, which meant for £25 you could have your name in the building. So although a lot of the fundraising was obviously at a high level, major trusts, the Heritage Lottery Fund, there was also an opportunity for ordinary people, if you like, whatever that means, to have a stake in the building. And so we've always been very conscious that yes, it is a way of bringing the business community together with the other members of the local community. It's bringing together, you know, all kinds of different interests and stakeholders into one organisation. I think there is always the temptation when you're developing a new facility, particularly a new building, to want to, if it's run and project managed well, to have everything sort of up and running and decided on the day you open your doors, and everyone puts huge efforts into having all the programming done and knowing, you know, exactly what's going to happen. You can say that almost everything you think is going to happen doesn't, in terms of the way people use the building, in terms of what's going to be successful and what isn't. And I think we learned very quickly that all those suppositions that had been arrived at over 2 or 3 years of research, working with consultants, putting together business plans, an awful lot of things you thought would happen just don't, and completely new things that you'd never dreamt of happen. And actually that was such a good thing, because 9 months down the line we just had learned so much more about what people used the building for, what they wanted from us, what were the kind of activities and events they wanted, and we were able to then put together a friends organisation that actually met the needs of the people who wanted to support us. So I think trying to be as flexible as possible. Obviously you have to have things set, you have to know what you're going to do in which room, and you have to have your exhibitions planned for a certain amount of time ahead. But the ability to kind of be quite light on your feet in responding to your audience, I think for a new venue is really, really important. And that does take a bit of nerve, really. You have to kind of hold your nerve and think, okay, if we don't actually get it absolutely right the first time, it doesn't matter, as long as we show we're kind of learning from the experience. And I think that's also being very open to comments and criticism from your users. It's quite a complex organisation, because you're doing all sorts of things. You're being a shopkeeper, you're being a caterer, you're being an educator, you're being a visitor attraction, you're being an event organiser, a huge range of things. And you can get a little bit divorced from actually, why are we doing this? We're doing this because we want the people to come through the doors and have a good experience, whatever that experience is. I think museums, less and less, certainly in my career, museums are less and less now sort of silo mentality. The curators do talk to the marketeers, and the marketeers, talk to the people putting up the exhibitions, and there's much more free flow between disciplines than there ever was. But I think, particularly with a new venue and quite a small venue, that degree of flexibility and having people who are really willing to kind of take on new challenges and try things that they might not necessarily be comfortable with is necessary. And that's about the culture of the organisation. It's constantly trying to make the organisation a responsive kind of learning organisation, rather than thinking this is what we do and this is what we've come here to do and we don't do anything else. Because we were very much the creation of, or in partnership with, Woking Borough Council. We are very much part of their community strategy. We are one of the main focuses of their community strategy in terms of the sustainability of the local community and being able to offer the local community these sorts of activities. And in order to give that kind of access as wide as possible, they were very, very keen that we should deliver as much as we possibly could free of charge. So access to the building has to be free. That's written into our contract. Retaining that free entry is hard because obviously a 40% council grant doesn't allow you to give free entry. That isn't the kind of the magic ingredient. But we are able to try and source that from charitable trusts, from corporates, and the fact that we can say we are going to be offering this free, I think helps us enormously in terms of our power, our fundraising power. We will do other things that you pay for, where we think, we've got a lecture with a really good speaker, a high-profile speaker. We will weigh up and think, well, actually, we can charge for that. We can always give discounts. We can give student discounts, young people discounts. But there are things where we are able to make some income. But I think our feeling is that, well, as long as we can keep our core programme free, that's what we want to do, and that's what we're here to do, really. So I think, the key thing that I always want to say about the Lightbox, and I always say, is that without carrying the local community with us, we wouldn't be here. I don't think we'd be here, and I don't think we'd be as successful. And by carrying the community with you, I mean always asking what people want and never prejudging that you know what they want. And while that process of consultation and constantly asking and taking note of what people say is a lengthy, time-consuming, often quite difficult to sort of see the wood for the trees, but it is an important process, because that is the only way you'll get people to buy in to what you're doing. We have 150 volunteers. They wouldn't be here if they didn't feel they had some stake in what we were doing, or some sense of ownership, if you like. So I think engendering ownership in the community is really, really important. Trying to ensure some kind of sustainable business plan, again, is really, really important. I know in the current climate, that is really, really hard to do. Trying to find some kind of ongoing sustainability, even if you can only look 3 years ahead, I think that's really important, because if forward planning is difficult, then audience development is very difficult. Understanding, where you want your artistic programme to go, all of those things stem from a core sustainability. The third thing, to be honest, is just tenacity, is just sticking with it, because the number of times through the history of the Lightbox it appeared that the project was going absolutely nowhere. Even when we had a gift of a site and there was a thought that it was going to happen, we had to raise £7 million, but it happened. And you know, the Lightbox is not an individual kind of one-off example. All around the country there are amazing projects that have happened in exactly the same way. You know, if you believe in what you're doing, it will happen eventually. And you know, the Lightbox gestation period has been really, really long. You know, 14 years between beginning and opening. So it happens in the end. I think if it's meant to happen, it will happen.